Hello, thank you for tuning into my channel. We're working on some quilt repair today, so if you want to see how to make a simple patch like this, please stay tuned. This is a quilt that I made for my niece, Della. The date on the quilt is July 5th, 2016, so almost 3 years ago. And I did a couple videos on it. It is quilt-as-you-go. It has really thin sashing through it, so each of these blocks was quilted individually, then joined together with the sashing. And on the back, you can also see the individual squares that were created. I used string piecing to create these blocks. There were some whole blocks that I just quilted or put a little border around and quilted, but I'll link the original video in the description so you can go back and check it out if you haven't already. Now, the reason that we're going to work on it today is because when I went the last time to see them, I noticed that this quilt had a few little worn spots on the back, and I couldn't tell, and they couldn't tell. I think these are from the washer. Here's one where you can see it's just a hole right here where the fabric used to be. There are a couple more, but they're much smaller. So there was one right here as well, but I've already patched this one up so I can figure out how exactly I wanted to show how to do this. So I'm going to be repairing all three of these. So there's one here, and there are two little ones I'll show you. One right here, we can see that the fabric is kind of worn through, and then one right here. And after I patch them up, I'll wash the quilt to make sure that they're gonna stay. Let's take a minute now and go over the materials that you'll need to do a quick repair like this. I've gathered all of my materials that I will need to make this. The only thing that I don't have is the ironing board because it's over there in the other section. One thing that's neat about this process is that I'm actually going to do it by hand. So I don't even need my sewing machine. I think that you could do it with your sewing machine, but I don't want the stitching to show on the front side. So I've just gathered some basic materials. I'm going to need a cutting mat. And I have two rulers here. I have a larger ruler because the area for that one section is a little bit bigger. This one I'm going to use to measure out the smaller sections that I need to fix. I also have my rotary cutter to cut my fabric, scissors, just some thread, and this can be scrap thread. It doesn't have to be anything special because you won't see it through the through the quilt. I also have just some regular straight pins, and then I have my hand needle that I'm going to just load with a little bit of thread. To get started, I'm going to move these things out of the way so that I can get to the first step. I need to see how large the section is that I need to cover so that I can determine how much fabric I need. Oh, before we do that, this is just some fabric that I was given. It's nothing really special. I just picked it because it has pink on it and the front has pink on it. Also, it'll give the back a little bit more character because it does not match any fabrics on the back. Since this quilt has already been well loved, I have already washed this fabric. So it's already been washed and dried and pressed because you don't want to put unwashed fabric onto fabric that's already been washed. So I did go ahead and wash this before we got started. So the first thing I'm going to do is on this first section here that needs to be repaired, I'm going to measure it so I know how much of the fabric we need to cover. I'm just kind of looking at it to see where the little tears stop, and they actually start from here at the top, and they don't really stop until all the way down here. So when I measure, I need to make sure that I include all of that. I'm using my larger ruler to see, and it looks like I'm going to need Well, I'm going to bring this up just a little bit so that I have a larger section that I'm covering. Let's see, so it stops, like I think that it's going to be about maybe 6 inches by 9 inches that I need to cover. So my patch is actually going to be at least this big. Now what I'm going to do to decide how big to cut the piece is I'm going to add 2 inches to each side. So I'm going to cut a rectangle that is 11, because it's this side is, or horizontal is 9, so it's going to be 11 across and then 8 down because the vertical was 6 inches. So I'm going to cut a rectangle that is 11 by 8. I can move the quilt out of the way, grab my fabric, and of course I'm going to do the same step for these smaller sections, but it'll just be a much smaller rectangle. And since I didn't have any plans to use this fabric for anything else immediately, it doesn't matter if I cut chunks out. I don't think it'll be okay. So let's see, 11 by 8. I'm just kind of eyeballing it here. It doesn't matter. It doesn't have to be super perfect. I just need to get a large piece. So cutting 11. Actually, I'm going to overcut this and then go back and fix it. Uh-oh, well, okay. I was cutting on top of the ruler, which is quite difficult to do. And now from this point, I'm going to use this intersection to get my 8 inches. Okay. Let's see. And then one more cut and I will have my rectangle. And you can cut this at whatever feels comfortable to you. I just need that, I just use 2 inches because I am gonna next press the rectangle. I'm gonna press in about 1 inch on each side. So it's gonna give me a nice big area to hand stitch on. So I'll go do that and then I'll come back and show you. I've pressed all my my little panels that I'm going to stitch on. I've measured all 3 of them and I've pinned them in place with my quilting pins, and these pins do go all the way through just to kind of hold this in place while I get ready to stitch it on. I'm going to be hand stitching and I'm going to use the blind stitch, which is the same thing that I use for my binding. So you may have already seen this or you may already know how to do it, but I'll just take a couple stitches here on camera so you can see it. I've just started on this side, so I only have like 2 stitches in, but I'm going to go ahead and do a couple more. So to do the blind stitch, I'm going to pick up a little bit of fabric from behind my panel and then go through the back of my panel. And what I'm doing is just in that little layer. I don't know if you can see where the needle is. So the needle it went through the back and then it's going just through that layer, and I kind of go along the edge of the press edge and pull it out so that when it's done you can't actually see the seam, the thread. Okay, and then I do it again, and on these folded edges it's a little bit more challenging just because I'm going through a couple of layers to get to my top section, but it'll still do nicely. And let's do one more, and then I'm going to do the rest of these off camera. I'll do all 3 sets and then I'll show you what they look like. Let's do one more stitch up through the back, and really it's trying to pull just a tiny bite. Hopefully these are not tiny bites that I'm doing, but whatever. I don't think it'll hurt. My niece won't be staring at my stitches. And then pull it through. Okay, and I'm going to do this same stitch all the way around on all 4 sides, and I'll do the other 2, the larger panel and the smaller panel. And I'll show you what they look like before I put it in the washer. I have all of the little panels sewn on, and these are basically just like little patches. So the next step for this is going to be to wash it, and just to make sure that the sections are going to hold. I don't know, like this isn't going to be like a really fancy quilt. It's already been loved, and so I don't think it's going to matter that these patches are different from the rest of the quilt. But I really like the way it turned out. I think it's going to hold nicely. I just want to see it after it comes out of the wash. So if you have any questions about this technique, or about quilting in general, please leave them in the comments below. Thank you so much for watching. Thumbs up this video, share it with your friends, and I'll see you next time. Bye!